Hey guys, Nintendrew here. I love the Nintendo 64, that much should be no surprise, so much so that I devoted countless hours of my life to hunting down a complete US library just a little over a year ago. And as a result, I've had a lot of people come to me and ask for advice on how to start building their own N64 collections. Well, here it is. Today I'll be running through a quick preview of each variant of the console itself, we'll take a look at some of the best options for controllers, and we'll cover some of the first titles you should pick up when collecting on a budget. So, let's get to it. Alright, so here is the standard dark gray Nintendo 64, also known as the charcoal console. This is probably what comes to mind when you think of the 64, but we have plenty of console variants to get through today. So in addition to the normal gray system, Nintendo also launched a line of brightly colored translucent systems a little further into its lifetime, dubbed the Fantastic series. And these include grape purple, watermelon red, jungle green, smoke gray, ice blue, and fire orange. These systems run a little more on the expensive side, so if you're just looking for a console to play the games, I'd recommend you go for the more common charcoal unit. But these are also great to have, and I think the whole set looks really nice together. Additionally, there are a few exclusive Japanese, European, and Australian variants on the Fantastic series, which you'll often see with a two-tone design including a white or black bottom half for the system's shell. I won't be covering those in depth because I don't have them myself, but they are out there as well. Next up, we've got the gold N64, and you've probably seen this in most of my videos up on my shelf here. This one was a North American and Japanese exclusive, and in the US it was only sold at Toys R Us stores. As a result, it's even more valuable than some of the Fantastic series consoles and can cost quite a bit of cash to get a hold of. But quick tip for you, if you're not averse to opening up the system and performing a 10-minute modification without any crazy tools or soldering required, you can actually modify a Japanese system to run US games, and that's what I've done in this case. I don't think I spent any more than $35 or so on this one. And finally, the last console variant I have today is the N64 Pikachu edition. I love this thing. The power switch is a Pokeball, the reset button is Pikachu's foot, and it's the only N64 system that actually changed the shape of the console, so it's very unique. There are also a couple of Japanese exclusive colors for this one, light blue and an orange, and Europe and Australia got a version which more closely resembled the original system and was sold with Pokemon Stadium. This one is probably the most expensive variant you'll come across, at least for US collectors, but if you're going for a complete set, you'll need to keep this one in mind as well. Alright, so now that we've covered the console itself, let's get to some controllers. First we've got just the normal gray N64 controller you're familiar with. This is kind of a controversial one. Some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, I really like this controller, and I have all sorts of different color variants of this guy, and I try to keep as many on hand as possible for some multiplayer shenanigans. Now, one big issue for new collectors is that the analog sticks on these guys are really prone to failure. Underneath this stick is a mechanism which basically has plastic rubbing against plastic and is easily worn down, which can cause a loose, unresponsive joystick. So if you're gonna buy one of these, make sure the stick is in good working order. Now, to get around that, you have a couple of options. There are some companies online that will sell replacement joysticks that you can use if you're not afraid to get your hands dirty and install it yourself. But what more people tend to do is to pick up a third-party controller from a company like Circa. These are often much cheaper than original controllers, and for all intents and purposes, they are basically the same thing. I'll leave a link to one of these in the description below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. So what other options are there? Well, the N64 has a multitude of crazy third-party controllers which are kind of hit and miss, but I do want to call attention to one in particular which deserves some praise. This is the HoriPad Mini, and it is a Japanese exclusive third-party gamepad. This thing is much closer in design to a traditional controller, and has a bigger, more responsive thumbstick in the style of the GameCube controller. This is the only third-party controller that I genuinely think is better than the original, but it costs a pretty penny, and your best bet is to order them from overseas on eBay, where they can go for upwards of $100. But if you're really serious about N64 collecting and want a controller that will last, this might be worth a look. Alright, hold up there 1 second. Just to give you guys kind of a look behind the curtain, I've been working on setting up a new 2018 game room/studio, so much of the footage that you've been watching has been pre-recorded a few weeks back. Since then, a company called Retro Fighters has come out with this, the new Brawler 64 gamepad. This is a brand new development and also a great third-party gamepad, even closer than the HoriPad Mini to a current-gen controller. I'll have a full review up soon, but just in the meantime, I wanted to say I highly recommend it, and I'll have a link for this one in the description as well. I know they just recently launched a new Kickstarter campaign for the fantastic versions of this controller too, so exciting stuff. Alright, back to the video. Alright, so finally let's talk about the games. The N64 saw just under 300 titles published in the US, and to kick things off, I'm going to assume that you're just getting started with your collection, and we're going to be covering some of the best games that you can get for under $20, kind of like an N64 starter pack. So first up, if I had to pick one game, the best game for your money's worth, I've got to go with Star Fox 64. It's a top-notch first-party title, and honestly, even more so than Mario or Zelda, I think this title has aged super well. It's just as fun to play today as it was 20 years ago. And the best part is you can usually find it for less than 15 bucks. Definitely a great choice. Next, if you like racing games, the N64 is home to a ton of solid racing titles that you can pick up on the cheap. F-Zero X, Wave Race 64, Beetle Adventure Racing, all great racing titles that won't break the bank. And a personal favorite of mine is Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Maybe an odd choice, but I've always liked the game's controls and tracks, and it's one I don't see get a lot of praise, so I definitely would recommend you picking that one up. Another personal favorite of mine is Pokemon Snap, another fun first-party adventure with a unique mechanic. Really hope we see some sort of a sequel or remake for this one someday. The original Turok is also very easy to find for cheap, usually under 10 bucks, a classic FPS. And another great FPS you should definitely pick up is Perfect Dark. Now, a lot of people have really fond memories and rave reviews for GoldenEye on N64, and it is a really good game. But Perfect Dark is a spiritual successor that really improves on almost every aspect of GoldenEye. Plus, it's about $10 cheaper on the retro game market. However, there is one catch in that you need to have a Nintendo 64 expansion pack in order to play the whole game. There were just a few titles that required the expansion pack, and it is a little bit pricey today. You can probably find one for closer to $30, $35. I would definitely recommend you do so if you would like to be able to play all the titles that the N64 has to offer. Another one of those games that require the N64 expansion pack is Donkey Kong 64. Again, still a great game if you're hunting on a budget, and this is one of those titles that really represents the era of the N64, the classic 3D platformer. Along those lines, we've also got Banjo-Kazooie. Oddly enough, this one has also kept under the $20 mark in recent years and is a steal at that price. Okay, so now to wrap things up, I'm going to run through a few classic N64 titles that everyone should have in their collection. These tend to run a bit more on the expensive side, but you should definitely keep them on your radar if you're looking to build a great library of N64 games. First, I've got to acknowledge the two big heavy hitters, Super Mario 64 and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Everyone knows about these games, I certainly don't need to sing their praises. Definitely keep your eyes out for a discount on these if you don't have them already. Another thing the N64 is really remembered for is great 4-player couch multiplayer games, and the big names here are going to be Super Smash Bros., Mario Party, and Mario Kart. All awesome party games with a ton of replayability, highly recommended if you've got a few gamers in your house. And finally, I've got a couple of more deep single-player experiences. I'd hate to forget to mention both Paper Mario and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Both are critically acclaimed adventures in their own right, and if you happen to come across a good deal, they deserve a spot in your collection. Okay guys, that's about all I have for this Nintendo 64 Collector's Guide. If you have any more questions for me, make sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, if you did, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share the video with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks again for checking out the video and for making it all the way to the end. Hope you enjoyed. As always, I've got links to all my social media in the description below, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, that sort of thing. And if you'd like to help out even more, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. Otherwise, I hope you'll look out for the next video. Take care.